lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. And before I start on the handout, I think I need to say a little bit about what's going on now with our landscapes and what we need to be doing, because this year's been like none other. I've been a master gardener for 18 years now, and I've never experienced this before, so kind of uncharted waters. But I'll give you what knowledge I know. Number one, the most important aspect of our landscape is our trees. I'm on water restrictions. I don't know if any of the rest of you are, but we have got to water our trees. And when I say water, I mean soak our trees at least 6 inches deep, because that's where the main feeder roots are. And you need to do that if you can once a week, if not at least every other week, because those are the ones you want to save. What people don't realize is that we can see the top part of the tree, and we can see if the leaves are wilted or if the limbs are getting lower in the ground, which means if your limbs are drooping more, it means that there's not enough water in the system. The roots at the same time under the ground are dying because they don't have enough water. It's one of the reasons you see a lot of oaks that just literally give up, you know, and it's going to take several years to recoup those roots. So we want to be able to save as many roots as we can save on our trees. Then we're going to go to shrubs, because that's our next investment that we've got. We're losing azaleas all over town. They're burning on top. Leave them. We won't know until next spring just exactly how much damage is done, unless you know uncertainly that it is dead. Just leave them, see how they come out in the spring. Now, a plant under stress is going to try to flush out to produce a seed so that they can survive. So some of our plants next spring may come out, flush out beautifully, and all of a sudden they're dead. And that's going to happen next year as well, and could the following year. It's going to take about 3 to 5 years to get out of this drought that we're in now, because I just put in a retaining wall on the lake where the water normally is. We dug almost 3 feet down. It is bone dry. And I mean the lake has just receded. So that lets you know how dry it is down below. Annuals, perennials. At this time of year, if they're still living, go ahead and lightly trim them back, lightly fertilize them. The nights are going to start getting lower, I hope, like this morning. And so they will start flushing back out and give you color until you get an opportunity to put in your annuals for this spring or fall and spring. So just lightly, that's what we did in the garden today. We pruned everything. Next week we'll go in. We're going to do a foliar fertilizer instead of a granular, because it's just easier to do in this garden. So either way, you go ahead and lightly fertilize. So is there any questions? As far as grass goes, just keep it as live as best you can. You can go ahead and use your pre-emergent on it if you can give it at least a ½ an inch of water after you do. I'd probably do it about the middle of September, the second, third week in September. You can also lightly fertilize at that time. If you can get a winter fertilizer, okay. If you can't, just use the 3-1-2 fertilizer and lightly fertilize those. That will carry you over into the spring. Any questions on what's going on now and what to do? Okay. All right, now we're going to go on as to what to plant this fall for spring blooms. And all of us know of the pansies, snapdragons, dianthus that they bring out. It's too early to plant those. You can put some snaps in, you can put some dianthus in, but don't put any pansies or real cool season plants in at this time. It's not cool enough. The nighttime temperatures need to be 50 degrees or lower consistently before you put those in. If not, they're just going to sit there. If they get too much moisture, they'll rot. So just go ahead and wait on those, even though they're in the market right now. Of course, fall is our best time for planting. It's less stress on us. It's less stress on the plants. With the cooler temperatures, the plants have time to get established before they get hit with the summer heat. So if you have any landscape plans for next year, do it now. It's time for bed preparation for next year. If you know you're going to put in a new bed or you're going to put in a garden next year, if you've got grass or weeds or anything, it's time to go ahead and kill that out. Go ahead and put your mulch in, put leaves on top of it, let it sit over winter. Next spring, it's ready to till and ready to go. A lot of times we have trouble putting in beds in the spring because it's too wet. If we could only hope. And you can't till, you can't work it. Well, you can in the fall most of the time. So go ahead and get those ready to go. One of the first things that bloom in the fall for us is our bulbs. And of course, there's all kinds of bulbs on the market, and I've given you a list here of some of the most ones that we use here. These are not complete list. I'd have had a whole lot more pages, so I just put the ones that I knew that we were pretty well find or could grow on our own. And on your bulbs, I will tell you, if you see there and you have a handout, that we do have a bulb sale that we will have in October. The bulbs that we sell are more heirloom bulbs. They are bulbs that you do not have to divide, dig. You can if you want to move them around the yard, but they just will maintain themselves. So, and we will have every one of the bulbs that are listed here. Of course, the daffodils and narcissus we always know about. Tulips. Tulips have to be chilled a minimum of 6 hours in the refrigerator, not with your vegetables. They need to be in a hydrator by themselves and need to be chilled, because in the north where they come in all the time or grow, repeat all the time, they get the cool winters that gives them the chill. We also have to treat them as annuals. We cannot hold our bulbs over. Our tulips or our grape hyacinths will not go over. And so the little snowflakes we can get, and we sell those at the bulb sale. Little Iphions are, if you're not familiar, they're a little blue, pink or white flower about that big around. They just come up about that high, and they're real nice in little borders or in your yard even, because they'll be finished by the time you're ever going to want to grow. And they will reseed and build you a nice little bed of them. And the Byzantine glads, they are a bright fuchsia glad that's going to bloom probably in mid-spring. They're just absolutely gorgeous. You can see them anywhere. They're a native. They grow on the sides of the roads. If you see them, you can dig them. Just do not take all of them and stay off people's property. But if they're in the roadside ditches, you are allowed to dig those bulbs. Okay, and then we're going to go into cool season annuals and vegetables. And in this garden, we use a lot of vegetables for color. Number one, they'll give us the height that we need, and green is just such a soothing color, and we can add them with our other blooming annuals. And of course, pansies, violas, and sorbetes, which are all in the pansy family, are the ones that everybody thinks of for cool season flowers. And we do use a lot of them. And they're a good old standby. A lot of times they just kind of sit there until the nighttime temperatures or the daytime temperatures start warming up. At that time, go ahead and feed them, because they'll be out of food by that time, and then that'll bring on a very nice show for you in the spring. Normally February is about the time that you'll probably want to feed, depending on our winter. If we have a real mild winter, it may be earlier than that. It just depends on what Mother Nature gives us. Alyssum is used as a border plant. It's a small plant, has little white flowers or purple or pink, and it is nice in a border, as well as parsley. If you've never used parsley to border your flower bed with, it is a very nice border, and will give you pretty color until it starts getting hot. Once it starts getting hot, you'll lose your parsley. Snapdragons, you can get them anywhere from small to medium to large. I like the rocket, the larger ones. They put on a better bloom for me, but they don't bloom normally until June. So they're sitting there all winter long building that nice root system, and then about the 1st of June they'll start really putting on a show, and depending on how hot it gets, how quick, they'll last probably all the way into the end of June, April. And they may bloom as early as May, depending on our winter. If it's real cold, they'll hold off. If it starts warming up sooner, they'll get color sooner. Dusty Miller's just a foliage plant, a silvery color. It is real nice with purples and oranges and your bright reds. Kale and cabbage. This is, of course, a vegetable, ornamental vegetable that we grow. It is readily available. All of these are readily available on the market. Now we're getting down to English daisy or bellis. It's a little harder to find. Most of our nurseries do not grow it. It is a very small, has a little bloom on it, hugs the ground. You have to use it as a border plant. But here again, it will last all winter long if you could get it. Stock you can grow yourself. You can find it. There is a fragrant type and a non-fragrant type. If we have a real cold winter, a lot of times you'll lose your stock, but you'll be able to find it early in the spring. Most of the time they'll carry that. Calendula is one that we use a lot, and it is kin to the zinnia, and it is very easy to seed yourself. You can grow it, you know, sprinkle it in, it'll come up, it'll make it through the winter. They have the little ones, and then they go on up to big. Most of them are orange or orange red or yellows. They're in the oranges families. And if you've never tried them, you really need to try them because they're really a very nice plant to have and bloom very well and will last until it starts getting real hot. Linaria is probably not real easy to find on the market. You can grow it out. Petunias. Petunias need to be put in now. We can't get the growers to grow them now. Wave petunias, if you put them in now, they'll last pretty much all summer long, and we do have some wave petunias still going in this garden that were planted in October last year. And that's when we put all our annuals in. It's normally October and November. So we'll start taking these out, or we'll start dividing them. We'll trim them and put them in between plants that are growing, which is a little secret, and then that gives you the color that you've still got now, but then you can plant in between, and it gives them a chance to get up and establish before you have to pull your summer annuals out. Gazania is another one that needs to be put in now. You can't find it normally until spring, but if you can, go ahead and get it in the ground. It will winter over for you and will establish well and probably last through the summer if it gets a little bit of shade. Every one that I have told you here is pretty much a sun-loving annual. Winter is very difficult for shade. They just are not a whole lot that will grow. Red mustard, now these are vegetables, and all of these can be grown from seed. You can direct seed them, or you can put them in seed pots and grow them out yourself, either way you want to. Red mustard we use an awful lot because it's tall. It will get probably this tall. The leaves will get this wide, and they'll be a lime green with a red veining down them, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And they'll get this big around. So they take up a lot of space, which we have in this garden. Swiss chard is another one that we use. Curly parsley, I've already mentioned. Red board kale is, and any of your kales are good, but the red boar is almost black. And it is very pretty behind a shrub bed or something where the green's behind it, and it pulls that black in, and it's a very nice one. Now, the topic is what blooms in the spring. Well, we've got a lot of shrubs that bloom in the spring as well as give us color in the fall. And I've just listed a partial listing of the shrubs here. Everybody knows about nandinas. They bloom in the spring, but they give us the pretty berries and the fall color. Your spireas or your bridal wreaths all bloom early in the spring. Hollies bloom in the spring and give us beautiful berries in the fall, and they're evergreen, so they're very pretty to have. Mahonia, it's blooming in January, December, January, so you've got your blooms on it, and then in the spring you've got your purple berries that just kind of cascade down, so it's very nice. And they have a new variety called Soft Touch, which is, your Mahonias are stickery. Well, this Soft Touch, you literally can touch it. It is not. We have one in the garden, and if we walk through, I'll show you where it's at. So, Pyracantha, of course, almost native here. Has our beautiful fall berries. Flowering quince is early spring. It blooms pretty orange flowers, and of course our Florenthias are yellow flowers early spring. So any of those you can plant once the weather starts getting cooler. Go ahead and, of course, prepare your bed. Bed prep is very, very important, and mulching is equally important, particularly this time of year, because if you're not mulching, all the water you're giving is just evaporating out of the ground because it's been so hot. So mulching is extremely important. Your trees, I just listed a few of your trees that bloom early that are pretty available on the market. The Carolina Silver Bell may not be, but it is a native more in our eastern area, and we have one up here. This is a Carolina Silver Bell, and it blooms the same time the dogwoods bloom, but the blooms hang down and they stay on longer. So it's really very, very pretty. So if you want to come out in early spring, that will be hopefully loaded. Now, blooms next spring on our azaleas, on our hydrangeas are iffy. We don't know if they're setting seeds in this heat. A lot of our annuals that should be blooming are not. So we don't know. We'll have to wait and see. We may not even have an azalea trail. We don't know, because it just has not been this hot this quick. So I know my hydrangeas aren't setting buds right now. They're barely surviving. So of course I'm under water restriction, and I have an acre of land, and I'm trying to keep trees and shrubs alive, and that's about all I can do right now. So of course your crab apples we see all over town, and your saucer magnolias are all over town. So what do we do now as far as maintenance? Well, I've told you about your trees, keeping them watered and all that. If you want wildflowers, it's time to prepare your bed, plant your wildflowers, because the seeds are time to go in the ground now. Any movement of shrubs or trees that you need to do, we're getting in the opportune time, because you're going to lose roots. They're going to be able to recoup those roots during the winter. So if you have to move plants around, do that. If there are any plants in the forest that you're wanting to move, or the outskirts of where you live you're wanting to move, the best way to do that is to root prune them, and you probably should have done it back in July. But by root pruning, I mean that you take the tree, and you need a small one, you don't want a big one, and you go around the outer edges with a sharpshooter and just sever all those roots. Well, what that does is it causes the tree to build the roots inside that surface area, so that when you get ready to move it, it has a better root system. So anytime you want to move something big, well, that's the way you go about doing it, is you root prune them. Now's the time to divide our spring blooming perennials, any of your Shasta daisies, your cannas, daylilies, all of those. It's time to divide them and separate them out. You can do it again in the spring, but here again, we're talking about that root system. Hopefully we start getting some rain, and that root system will be able to develop. And of course, I've mentioned mulching. Mulching is so very important. We preach and preach and preach about mulching, but this year, really, it's been a lifesaver for a lot of plants, is to go ahead and mulch. Lightly fertilize grass and trees, we mentioned, or grass and shrubs, we mentioned that. If you need to, and that even your azaleas, lightly, very lightly, but go ahead and give them a little feed, give them a little boost. Hopefully these cooler weathers are going to help. And I mentioned preparing your beds for winter. Leaves, use your leaves. Y'all go down and spend a whole bunch of money on soil amendments and everything, and Mother Nature gives them to you right there every winter. Yeah, I mean, you've got all those leaves. If you don't have a compost bin, mow over those leaves, rake them up, throw them in your flower beds. They'll decompose, they'll make nutrients for next year. They'll also help insulate that soil. So go ahead and don't bag them, use them. Pine needles, same thing. Rake them, use them, because they're not very well in a compost bin. It takes them a long time to break down unless you want to run them through a shredder. If you run them through a shredder, then they'll break down quick enough. But if not, put them in the flower beds, put them around trees. I have several young trees in my landscape this year because we had to take down a couple of trees. And I have probably 8 feet of pine straw around each one of those trees that I've been trying to water and keep, and they're looking good. But it's been a lot keeping that soil moist, keeping those weeds down to where every water I give it goes to that tree and doesn't go to the grass or anything else. So use your leaves, use your pine straw. Now I want to tell you, I ran across a site that is an online water calculator, and it literally will tell you, once you answer some questions, how much water per week you need to put on your lawn based on, they do all the atmospheric stuff, the amount of rainfall we've had, what type of lawn you have, and it literally tell you how much water to use. And if you'd like to know what it is, I'll give you that website. And it's, of course, HTTP, or TTP, :// and it's TEXASET .tamu.edu. And it's kind of interesting because it can give you with it 1/10 of an inch how much water needs to go on. And I didn't get to go to it. I read about it, and I think if it's not there, it's under Aggie Horticulture somewhere that will tell you how to take, if you have a system, an irrigation system, how to test and see how much water your irrigation system is actually putting out. And it basically is just using either tuna fish cans, cans of the same size, a saucer of the same size. You put it around in different spots of your landscape. You run it for 30 minutes, 15 minutes, however, and measure the amount of water that is in those cups. Then you know how much water is going out in that amount of time, and you can tell how much water you're putting in your landscape. So that's the easiest way. I mean, we did ours a couple of years ago and found out in my front yard, which is watering a lot, I have to use it an hour and 15 minutes to get a 1/2 inch of water down, which is what I want each week. You know, in some places in the backyard, it's only 45 minutes, but it's not watering as large of an area. So it's always good to know, particularly now, that how much water we're actually putting in our landscapes. So, are there any questions that you need to ask me? Concerns? Y'all are so smart. Are you sure?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Where do you get your vegetables?
I order mine through the seed catalogs,
Okay.
and I just go online. I'll use Parks, I'll use Burpsy, I'll use Thompson's.
Okay.
Yeah, you can get every one of them there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. You say when you're mulching, put down your mulch first and then your leaves? Is that?
You can do it any way you want to. If you have your leaves available, I would put them down first before the mulch. Yeah, because they'll break down. Not only will they break down and cause the nutrients, because they put nitrogen in the soil, they'll pull all the worms up in there, which will also give you more nutrients for your soil. So I'd put them down first. Yeah, one year my husband thought I was absolutely crazy because I was bagging the leaves and shredding them, and then I was taking them and pouring them in the flower bed. And he said, "What's the purpose, you know?" And I said, "Well, this, you know, but you want to chip them first, because if you don't, a leaf has a coating on it and it will not break down as easily or as quickly, and it also will stop the water from going down. They'll pack. So be sure and mow over them and then put them back, or crush them some way to put them back in. Same thing if you put them in a compost bin. They'll break down a whole lot quicker if you'll break them up first, shred them or something. Any other questions?
Trimming a wisteria. I have one that's on a pergola thing that's hanging way down. I just didn't know how much to cut it back when.
You can cut it back as much as you want to, but I would wait until spring, almost any shrub that you really need to cut back. If you'll wait until right before we start flushing out again, which is normally February, March, area, and then it'll go ahead and flush on out for you. Normally, you've already done that. You do it normally right after a bloom cycle on wisteria. But if it's really gotten out of hand, you know, go ahead and just realize that you're going to lose your blooms for next year. Same thing with climbing roses, same thing with hydrangeas. Any spring blooming plant has already set its buds for next year, or is right now. So normally July is the latest that you want to cut anything back, and on wisteria you normally cut it right after it blooms. So, but just depends on how bad it's bothering you.
When do they normally bloom? I know we moved into this house.
They'll bloom about mid-June, June,
Maybe a little early. It depends on the root.
you know.
One thing you can do with wisteria also is root prune it.
Is what now?
Root prune it.
Oh, okay.
That works for you.
Yeah, and it'll make it bloom more. If you have one that doesn't bloom, root pruning will make it bloom more. And I talked about the root pruning going around and cutting off those.
It's like a raised bed, and the soil in there is really loose. I mean, it's just like fluff.
Well, that's kind of good. That's, yeah, go ahead and mulch. Go ahead and mulch it. Well, just get up in there if you can with a shovel and go around it. But you may want to wait and see if it's going to bloom for you and see what it's going to do.
Seemed like I read a long time ago that if you give wisteria too much nitrogen, then it won't bloom.
You're absolutely correct. It'll go into vegetative state instead of a bloom state. You're right. It's hard when they're in a flower bed or in a lawn not to get them on, but you're correct. Any other questions?
Will you repeat the website for the waters?
Yes, I will. Did you get the HTTP? You know that one. Okay. It's TEXASET.TAMU, which is Texas A&M University.edu. Yes, sir. And also there is a lot of information on the Aggie Horticulture website. Anytime you need to do something, if you can go there and Google it, you can get more information than you probably really want to know. So it's very, very important. We also have a website that you can check that lists, of course, all our upcoming events and has a lot of information on it also. It has the plant of the month that or the plants of the month each month, telling you what's blooming in this garden and a lot of information. And check it out monthly. It's very well done.
I do have another question. We just moved into the house. I know nothing about plants, but the lady who lived there had lots of plants.
Uh-huh.
There are two really large hydrangeas. They still have the blooms on them. Of course, they're
Mm-hmm.
dead. Should I just leave them at this point, or should I?
It's up to you. If you want the color and different color during the winter, you can leave them. If not, you can trim them off. It's whatever you want to do with them. But as you look down, if you look on that hydrangea, you can see below that bloom stem where it has started coming out again, and it may be down this far before, and you cut down to that junction. So most perennials and shrubs will tell you where they want to be cut. If you'll just look down that stem, they'll start coming out somewhere else. That's where you want to go down to. Okay.
I have another question.
Yes.
You're talking about like you're going to move a small tree.
Uh-huh.
You're going to do it now.
Mm-hmm.
In the fall.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about going around it.
Mm-hmm.
How far in advance should you do that? Or is it too late to do?
Well, it's too late to do it for this year, but you can go ahead and move it once it starts cooling down a little bit. And hopefully we get some moisture. If we don't get any moisture, what I'm going to recommend is that you go ahead and get as large a root ball as you can on that tree. As big, you know, a lot of times I have had to literally do them and put them on something to drag them where I needed them to go. Dig the hole as deep as that tree is growing, twice as wide. So, twice as wide. Okay, if you've got a root ball this big, then you go twice as big around and dig that hole. You want those roots to go out laterally. You don't want them to go down, you want them to go laterally because those are the support and the feeder roots. Most of your feeder roots are within the top 12 inches of the soil, so you want them to go that way. But soak that soil down good before you plant the tree, because the soil structure is so low right now that you need to wet it around, then let all the water drain down, then put your tree in, and then start filling back in again.
Is there someone you would recommend to come and do?
I'm telling you what, I wish there was somebody that would do that type of work, because it's so difficult to find anybody that will come do these small jobs for us. You know, if you need a hedge took out or a bed redone, you know, landscape companies, unless you want to hire them to come in and do a major project, they don't want to do it. I don't know. I really don't. I'm sorry. If you can find a young college kid that's hungry, maybe. So.
They're cutting the roses back here, so I guess this is a good time.
Yes,
to cut the roses.
yes. They cut them back about a third this time of year to get the flush of bloom for October, for the Rose Festival. And normally the 1st of September is when they start cutting. And as you see or hear, they're using hedge trimmers this time of year. And then in the spring, they will come in and hand prune every one of these roses down to 3 to 4 stems, which is quite a job. But that's, yeah, they're cutting them back, getting ready for Rose Festival. So if you have roses, go ahead and give them a light. Give anything a light pruning right now, except your shrubs that are struggling. Don't mess with them yet. Just let them try to survive like they are. Because anytime you cut something, it's going to push growth. That's what you're telling that plant, is that you want it to grow, and it's going to flush that growth out. So, which is what they want for the blooms. Any other questions? Gosh, y'all are smarter. I've done a good job one. So look for your plants starting once it starts cooling down to get in for your spring. Try some of the vegetables. I think you'll be very, very pleased. And some of the ones that I told you that you can seed out for spring. You can seed those wave petunias out too, and they're really the best on the market. And that silver one is to die for. It's pretty at night and it's pretty during the day. So if you can order it out, get it in the ground, let it get going. So I'm going to walk through the garden. If you want to walk and look and have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions or tell you what variety it is if I can remember it.